News Channel 5 Network, this is MorningLine with Nick Beres.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us on MorningLine. Nick Beres here on a Wednesday. And this is always one of my favorite shows because I learn a lot every time our guest comes on. We're going to be talking this morning about malpractice, if you will, healthcare as a whole, and maybe give you a chance to call in if you think you have a situation maybe where one way or the other you're not happy or you think something went wrong in a visit or dealings with a hospital or a doctor. And there have been some high-profile cases lately. Specifically, boy, it's been a rough time lately, at least with a couple of cases involving Vanderbilt Medical Center. We're going to get into some of that and more. We'll take your phone call, 737-7587, a chance to get some free legal advice to a guy who doesn't come cheap, darn it. Clint Kelly, malpractice attorney.
Morning, how you doing?
Extraordinary. It's good to have you on, sir.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
It's a pleasure. We were just talking. I don't know if you want to go into detail. You just got done with the trial?
I did. Tried a case in Bowling Green and did not get the result we wanted, unfortunately. But it verifies what you and I have talked about before, which is you have to have major damages, serious damages, loss of a leg, paralysis, death. Something that completely compromises someone's ability to earn a living, or gigantic medical bills, or it's my judgment, juries tend to forgive the doctors and let them off the hook. Yeah,
so meaning there could have been something done wrong. But if the person didn't lose a leg, well, okay, mistakes happen. We're just going to let it go.
Yeah, in our judgment, we had proven that there was something done wrong. It was a case where a doctor had perforated a lady's esophagus during a procedure in which you go in and remove gallstones. And one of the issues in the case had to do with whether the perforation got larger from the time she left that doctor's hospital until the time she was transferred to another hospital. But again, I spent 30 minutes in closing argument on the liability, but only spent about 5 minutes on the damages because the lady made a full recovery.
Okay. Well, Clint, yeah, why'd you take the case?
Because I wanted to help her.
Okay.
And you and I, we talked about this a lot, Nick, where people call and they have damages and you ask them, have you recovered? And they make a full recovery and they don't understand why I can't take a case like that. Well, I proved again in Bowling Green, like I have in other cases, juries simply aren't compensating folks in those cases.
Well, there has to be and I understand this. There may have been a wrong, but you're collecting money for a client if there were damages. I mean, you can punish maybe the hospital by forcing them to pay something, but you know, if that woman had lost her voice or something like that forever, then that's a damage that needs to be compensated for. What's your voice worth? My goodness.
Correct.
But if she's 100% healthy after what might have been a period of time where she went through some anguish healing or whatever, I can see how a jury might say, well, I'm glad you're better. That's your reward. I don't know.
That's exactly it. I mean, I think you just nailed it. I think that's exactly what they think in their minds. I think we've done this with focus groups and they've come to the same conclusion. It's easier to forgive a doctor, which is basically, they lean to the doctor from the beginning. It's easier to do that when the patient has made a full recovery.
Okay.
See, it just makes sense. Why punish the doctor if the patient has made a full recovery and can move on with their lives? Right. I think that's how jurors reconcile in cases, particularly if they're close cases, giving the doctor the benefit of the doubt.
Well, I'm glad you touched on it because, again, there are cases that you've talked about in the past you've had to pass on simply because you didn't think there was room there for damages.
That, and also, Nick, there are a lot of lawyers who simply, they don't try cases anymore. They don't go in front of a jury and try a case. A lot of these TV advertisers don't do that. I do. That's part of my job. It's the only way I know how to properly evaluate a case on the front end is through experience, good and bad, with juries.
You are so right. I just wanted to ask you this. As the legal profession as a whole, do the folks that you're suing get an idea? If they think you're someone who, and I know you're not, is afraid to litigate or doesn't litigate, it would be less likely for them to want to deal with you or give you really what you want because they don't fear going to trial if you call their bluff.
Absolutely. I mean, there is no question. The insurance companies know the lawyers who will go to trial and they know the ones who won't. Yeah. And they are going to pay the ones who don't go to trial less than the ones who will because they know at the end of the day the lawyers who don't go to court will take what the last offer is because they just want to settle.
Yeah, and they know they have no confidence in themselves going to court. That's my take. If a lawyer should, there's nothing wrong with settling. You'd say you settle.
No, of course not. I settle most of my cases.
Most of your cases.
Yeah.
But there always has to be the specter there, I would think, of litigation. And if not, I mean, I want a lawyer that I know if we have to go to trial can kick some butt.
In cases where the hospital and the doctor wants to negotiate, and that's going to be most cases, they're going to offer me their top dollar because they know that if they don't, I will take take them to court, and I will make them pay if they don't.
Yeah, and if you do win where you have a patient with good damages, you can get more than they're going to settle for.
Correct.
You never know. All right, real quick. Obviously, you're a malpractice attorney. You want to remind folks you're certified in that realm. That's
correct.
all you do.
Board certified.
Okay,
Yeah.
all you do. And, you know, we can take phone calls, 737-7587. We'll open up the phone lines here in a moment. If you have questions about cases, we always talk about this. If you're wondering, it's a 1-year statute of limitations. It was funny, we did the tease this morning, and I sometimes wonder if the anchors pay attention. But Amy Rao, I mean, not when I say Amy Rao, she used to work here, and she's a lawyer, but Amy Watson, you know, said to me, Nick, and isn't it true? And she kind of caught me by surprise that you only have a year to file your claim. I go, you've been listening. And she goes, yeah, I listened to Clint. And I said, well, that's great. People need to know that.
They do, because it makes the difference between whether you're going to get your day in court or not. It's 1 year. You have 1 year from the date you discover your injury or wrongdoing to file what's called pre-suit notice against the doctor or hospital, or else you'll never get a chance to sue.
Yeah. All right. So keep that in mind as you consider whether or not you want to call for yourself or someone else. All right. As the opening of the show, and I know you texted me or called me right when this happened. Yeah. So we've talked about Vanderbilt has this case already pending regarding a nurse who's facing some criminal charges as well for giving the wrong medicine to a patient who ended up dying. Now, this case follows that. Vanderbilt doctors being sued $25.5 million for operating on the wrong kidney.
Now, full disclosure, Nick, I have had multiple cases against Vanderbilt, and I have cases pending against Vanderbilt, so I want to get that out on the front end. But with that said, this isn't my case. The allegations are disturbing. I've told you from the very beginning that we're going to see more and more of these types of cases as time goes on, because in my judgment, hospitals are taking on more business than they can handle, and because of that, the margin for safety is decreasing on a daily basis. And what that means is you're going to have situations where shortcuts are taken, and patients are going to be operated on, they're going to have the wrong body part operated on, or they're going to be misidentified, and these types of situations, tragedies are going to occur until they get a grip on this. And I don't see anything that the hospitals are doing to get a grip on it. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, don't take the $25 million to mean anything. That's just something they write. This lawyer decided to put in a complaint.
Right.
It doesn't mean that's what the case is worth. You know what it does? It gets headlines.
Yep.
Doesn't it?
Yep. Yep.
You know,
the lawyer calls it, and you've said it, a mistake so rare and preventable that medical experts, I guess medical experts quoted by the lawyer, call it a never event, meaning it never should happen.
That is true. That's how experts refer to it.
These things do happen, though, right? I mean, now with surgeries sometimes outside the body, I mean, if you're going to have your knee done, don't they kind of put a big X on it? This is the knee. And I don't know how you do that with a kidney. I guess
there is a timeout procedure, Nick.
Okay.
It's very simple, and it works every time. It's a 4-part procedure. Before doctors operate, they're supposed to do 4 things. Step back from the patient, identify, do we have the right patient? Do we have the right body part? Do we have the right supplies and instruments? And do we have written consent from the patient? Which means you look into the chart and make sure right patient, right name, right date, signature. You do those 4 things, you will not operate on the wrong kidney.
Okay. And that's standard of care.
Absolutely.
You don't do that and you operate on the wrong kidney, you're in trouble.
You remember the baby that got operated on the, remember that on the tongue without permission? The case you and I covered, it went national. That was a situation where the doctor did a shortcut and did not do the timeout procedure. Look what happened.
All right. And this can happen at any hospital. I mean, this happens to be Vanderbilt, which has, you know, I mean, Vanderbilt has its problems like a lot of hospitals do, but it has a good reputation. And you're like, gosh, I mean, it's a fine hospital and these things happen, and they keep happening. So again, you're just saying, as you said a moment ago, I mean, these doctors, is it a rush? Is it the nurses handling it more? Is it they just don't take the time?
I have a lot of familiarity with Vanderbilt. I've been litigating against Vanderbilt for over 20 years, and I have an idea of what goes on at Vanderbilt. I know how they do business. And you're right, they are a good institution. They do great things, but they make some tragic errors, and there are reasons for it. And I think a lot of times the reason for mistakes is you've got it's a teaching institution. Right. So you've got students and residency members making big decisions that the faculty members should be making. If you think of it as a totem pole, the person on the bottom of the totem pole sometimes are making the biggest decisions about the patient's well-being, and when that turns out to be a bad decision, a terrible thing happens.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that's what happened here. I know nothing about the facts of this kidney case other than what's reported, but I can tell you in other cases that I've handled against Vanderbilt, they leave the biggest decisions to what I think is the least qualified person to make them.
Boy, all right.
Yeah.
I just don't want to get sick.
Stay out of the hospital, Nick. You know, we talk about that all the time, don't we?
You got me. I seriously, at least once or twice a week, something you've told me comes up with someone, and I go, "Well, Clint told me this," and then we can't. You don't want to go to the hospital.
And see, the scary thing about this, Nick, is you can't guard against this. There's nothing the patient can do to protect against this outcome. I mean, you're under anesthesia, you're out. None of the family members are there to make sure it's done right. You are completely at the mercy of the doctor and the staff to make sure they operate on the right body part. And if it turns out to be wrong, there's nothing you can do about it but live with it.
Yeah, and sue.
Or sue.
Yeah. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we've got some calls coming in. The number is 737-7587. Also wanted to talk to you about a case out of California where I think some 1,800 women, if you heard about it, were filmed without their knowledge or videotaped. It's not tape anymore, just videoed during childbirth or surgical procedures, and they didn't know it.
Right.
And we'll take a break. Be back with that and your phone calls if you have questions about malpractice cases right after this.